In the previous lesson, we talked about hosting a Git repository. We saw some of the benefits of doing that, and I also showed you how to host your Git repository on a platform like GitHub. Now in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to download a repository from GitHub to your device. So this is the repository that we hosted in the previous lesson. So let's say you are on a new device, a new laptop. How can you get this repository from GitHub to your device? Well, this is where you use the git clone command. The git clone command is used to create a local copy of a remote Git repository. And this way you can start working on a project on your device without affecting the original repository. So how do you do that? Now, this is GitHub. If you're working on GitLab, Bitbucket, or other Git hosting providers, it will also be the same thing. So here, if you come to code and I click on this, you can see that we have the HTTPS URL. There's also the SSH, which we'll look at later. But with this HTTPS, I can copy this URL, and then here I can do git clone. By the way, I am cloning into my GitHub directory. So you also have to choose the directory where you want to clone that repository. Here I have my GitHub directory, which is where I put all my GitHub stuff, and I have navigated to that in my terminal. You also need to navigate to the right place in your terminal. So for example, in my case, I needed to navigate to users, Dillion Megida, desktop, GitHub, because that is the GitHub directory. So you have to navigate to the right location, and now I can do git clone, and the syntax is git clone and the URL that you want to clone. Now there are many more options that you can use with the clone command, and in future lessons we'll dive deeper into the clone command and see the different things you can do with it. But at the basic level, you have git clone and the URL that you want to clone. Now when you do it like this, what is going to happen is that it's going to copy this repository from GitHub to a directory called git cause demo. But if you want to put another name, then you can also add that name of the directory here. So for example, I can say random demo. So I'm going to show you without random demo. Let me just do this. So git clone and then the URL, and I do this, you can see cloning into git cause demo. So a directory git cause demo is created, and then all of these things here are going to be copied into that directory. Now if we go back here to this GitHub directory, you can see I have a git cause demo, and when I click it, you can see we have all the files from that repository here. And currently the .git directory is hidden, but I can show hidden files. So you can see this is the .git directory, which is going to be the repository that contains all our history. But by default, it is hidden on my Mac. So that is why you didn't see it initially. Now, when I activate show hidden files, you can see the .git directory here. Now let's go back to this same command. We're going to do git clone, the repository URL. Now let me enter a different directory name. So I'm going to call this random demo. Now when I do this, you can see cloning into random demo. And if we come here, we have git cause demo, which is the copy we created previously. And now here we have random demo. So if you do not provide a directory, then Git is going to use the name of the repository as your directory, but you can also provide a different name, just as I did here. And now that we have this, I can come to random demo and open this directory here on VS Code. And now that I have this in VS Code, I now have the .git directory here, and I have all my files here. If I go back to the terminal, currently I'm in random demo. Before, we were on GitHub, but then you can do cd random demo. So now we are here, and now that we're here, we can continue doing our Git stuff. If we run git status, you can see that on branch main, your branch is up to date with the origin main. What this means is that currently the state of our local repository is the same as the repository we have on GitHub. Now, if you remember in the previous lesson, we talked about Git remote, which allows you to set up connections with remote repositories. Now, if I should do git remote and v, what you notice is that Git automatically set the origin remote to this GitHub repository here. So when you do git clone, then Git helps you set that remote. So here we have origin, and this points to this URL, and we can do a fetch. We have origin points to this URL, and we can do a push. You can also choose to change the remote connection if you want. We'll talk about that later on, but I just want to show you that when you clone, you don't need to set the remote anymore. In the previous lesson, we had to do git remote add origin, but when you clone, Git already does that for you. And now we can fetch changes from this online repository, and we can also push changes. Now let's quickly make one change. Let's say in api.py, I remove this line. Let's just say that's a new change we make to our software. Now if we run git status, well, we have this file has been modified. Now I can do git add api.py, or I can do git add dot, which is going to add every new change I currently have. So git add dot, and then if I do git status, you can see in the staging area I have this, and now I can commit it. So git commit, let's just say remove a line as our commit. Okay, now that we have this, if I should run git status, now this is what you're going to see. It says that your branch is ahead of origin main by 1 commit. If you remember previously, it said that our branch is up to date with the remote repository, but now it says that our branch is ahead because we have 1 extra commit in our local repository, which we do not yet have in the remote repository. So what I can do now is I can push my new commits to the online repository. So here in the online repository, we have 8 commits. But if I should now do git push origin main, it's going to push the new commits I have here. So here 8 commits. Once I refresh, now we have 9 commits, and the last commit is the remove a line. So this is how the git clone command allows you to create a copy of a remote repository on your own local device, and you can make changes on your local device and then push it back to the remote repository. And if any change is also made on the remote repository, you can also download those new changes to your own local repository. Like I said, as we progress with this course, we'll be looking at more things you can do with git clone, git remote, and the several other commands that you can use with git.